growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions like, how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com. Restaurants have been loading their menus with new items lately. Hello, this is Jonathan Mays, Editor-in-Chief of Restaurant Business, and this week's episode of A Deeper Dive will focus on menu development. Specifically, we're going to talk about the ridiculous number of items that restaurant chains have been adding to their menus over the past couple of years. Here is a statistic. There were nearly 26,000 limited time offers in the restaurant industry in 2023, according to Technomic. That was up 46% from 2022 and 53% from 2019. In short, restaurants have broken out of their pandemic-fueled restrictions on new menu development in a really big way. The reason is pretty simple: necessity. Restaurants have struggled to generate traffic the past couple of years and were leery about going too deep into a value war. But there are dangers of all this menu development, which we are going to talk about this week. And I've roped senior menu editor Pat Cobe to the podcast to talk about this. Pat, welcome again to the podcast.
Thanks, Jonathan, for inviting me.
All right, what's the deal? Why are we seeing so much menu development in restaurants right now?
Well, I think it's mostly to attract younger consumers. Gen Z is always into exploring new flavors. They like a lot of innovation, and that's the target demographic now for a lot of the chains. I think it's actually the quick service chains that are introducing the most limited time offers and new menu items, because a story I did recently this year, they doubled the number of limited time offers and new menu items they had, done in 2023 into 2024. So that was pretty significant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But they're always trying to attract younger consumers. Why the jump? And has that pace of limited time offers that we saw last year, has it slowed down at all?
Not this season. I mean, the holiday season, things have really revved up a lot. I mean, it seems like it used to be that there would be maybe 4 limited time offers a year, 4 different windows. And now they seem to come out every month. And we just finished pumpkin spice season. Now we're into peppermint mocha season in the coffee chains. They've introduced some new flavors this year, like cookie butter is really trending in a lot of the coffee chains, which I haven't tried yet, but it sounds pretty intriguing.
Mm-hmm. How many, but in the pace of menu development, I mean, how many, we had 26,000 limited time offers last year. How many have there been so far this year?
Well, Technomic gave me some statistics that up until October, which isn't even the end of the year, there are already over 30,000 new items or limited time offers.
30,000.
Yeah.
They've already outpaced what was a ridiculous level of menu development last year through October. That's a lot, Pat. There's a lot of menu items. Why do they need so many menu items? Why do they need it? And I don't know. I mean, my perspective on this is I don't see this doing its job, frankly. All these, these new menu items aren't necessarily pulling in gobs and gobs of traffic if I look at the numbers, especially in the fast food business.
Right. Well, I mean, there are more, but they last a much shorter time. I mean, the windows are maybe just a few weeks for some of these items. And so they're testing out a lot of things that may go on the permanent menu if they work. I don't think limited time offers necessarily build traffic, but they drum up interest and they can give an indication of whether they should be included on the permanent menu in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, are there sectors in which they do this, that are doing this more than others?
Well, we talked about the coffee sector. I mean, there are so many new coffee drinks coming out every couple of weeks, not just for the holidays, but during the summer, there were all these, refreshers and new formats. It's not only the coffee chains, but the smoothie chains that come out with summer flavors, and then they come out with an August flavor. Even though July had watermelon, they might be doing blueberry in August. It seems like the consumers have an insatiable demand for something new. Mm-hmm. And that's their thinking. I don't know if it's actually true, but that's their thinking.
Right. Well, let's talk about this coffee thing for a minute, because, let's look at, there are two brands that I'm most concerned with when it comes to all this menu development, in the big chain universe that I cover and tend to focus on. One of them is Subway, and we'll definitely talk about them later. But the other one is Starbucks. And Starbucks has just completed one of the worst fiscal years in its history. And, in the calendar year 2024 was the worst year they've had since, I think 2009. Wow. During the Great Recession. It was a awful year. They introduced new products at a rate that I don't know that we've ever seen. So during this brutal year, they introduced Oleato, the olive oil coffee. They introduced the world to that. They introduced a platform of lavender flavored beverages. They introduced energy drinks. They introduced pearls or boba tea, and yet they did not. Yet, like in their last quarter, their traffic was down 10%. If we go back to the first 3 months of 2024, the first 3 months of this year, which was a very notable quarter in the company's history, effectively, a landmark quarter for the wrong reasons, which means that was the one where we saw, oh my God, Starbucks has some real problems. If you recall, in last April, when they released their earnings, and then Howard Schultz came out and publicly criticized the CEO that he handpicked, and required to go through a really complicated, sort of training regimen. During that quarter, they introduced lavender, beverages. And at the time they were saying that that lavender line was almost as popular as pumpkin spice latte. They were touting it as one of the best new product introductions they ever had. And they still had sales and traffic declines. And I only say this is like the issue that I have. There is an absolute downside to all of this menu development. There is a big, clear, screaming downside to all this menu development, because it is, in my opinion, pretty excessive. And not just at Starbucks, just broadly speaking, because they spent so much time developing new menu items, and it didn't work to generate traffic. And what it did was exacerbate a problem that we've long known Starbucks has had. And their problem is they have overworked baristas. Their lines are too long. They have complicated issues with mobile ordering and with inside traffic. So they have serious operational issues that they're dealing with. And they knew that going into all of this. And then they unleashed a bunch of new menu items onto their baristas and their customers. And just really sort of gumming up operations. And for them, which is also customizable, their drinks are almost fully customizable. So that becomes an issue. And if you look at Oleato, this is a long rant, but if you look at Oleato, and that was a product that was really different. I mean, really, really different. And Brian Nickel just revealed that the company had, and I don't know if it's actually specifically with regard to Foley Auto, but some of the products that they've introduced this year did not follow the company's normal stage gate process. So they did not go through the proper channels. And so the point is that you end up creating operational problems by introducing so many different menu items. And it really can cause problems for employees, but it also makes it more complicated for customers.
No, I agree, but I think smart restaurant companies do go through the a thorough testing protocol before they launch something on the menu. And as you know, like Sweetgreen, for example, when they launched their caramelized garlic steak, they tested it in one city first, and they saw how it did, and it resulted in more traffic at dinner time and better sales. And then it rolled out on the menu, and it wasn't operationally difficult because they were able to use the same equipment. They just had to add one SKU. And if you go through the correct testing procedure, I don't think it complicates things. Although I do think there are too many items coming out at once. It just confuses the consumer. I mean, there are a lot of people who still wanted a pumpkin spice latte in November, but they were gone from Starbucks because it was peppermint mocha time.
Right.
So I think it really is confusing.
Right. I mean, the thing about Sweetgreen is I don't think, I don't get the sense that Sweetgreen just unleashes this constant stream of new products all the time. Much like Starbucks has done this year and, and other chains, Subway is another one.
Right.
And Subway in 2021, unleashed, did what I thought was a really admirable thing in terms of, all right, we're going to upgrade our ingredients. And I thought that was the right thing to do. Subway has an issue with a quality perception. And so upgrading your quality was a really good thing. But in the years since then, they've basically they've been introducing, new sandwiches all the time, new products all the time. They just introduced another new bread. They've been just introducing new product after new product after new product after new product. And I don't really see that they've removed anything from the menu. Is it the issue? If you want to introduce 10 products to your menu, you should probably remove 10 products, or you should have a system in place that your system can handle the introduction of, how many ever new limited time offers. Chick-fil-A is a perfect example. If they add a product to the menu, they take a product off. And then they have certain menu items that they bring every so often, for a limited time. And the benefit there is you're keeping your menu more edited, and you're not gumming up your operations.
Right. Well, Subway also, they added entirely new platforms, right, like their snack platform, the foot-long dippers and the foot-long cookies. That was an entirely new platform that was added this year. And I guess that was to get more people in at different day parts. But I think most people who go to Subway probably order the same thing every time they go.
I mean, it's great. Like if you're going to add snack items, and I don't have any particular issues with adding snack items. I mean, my issue really tends to be that, you just have to keep this day and age, you have to keep a menu that's, tightly edited. Too many restaurant companies spend too much of their time focused on the customer that they don't have. Since I started covering this industry, and I'm sure you've heard this about a million times, you heard the concept of the veto vote. So many restaurant executives are so worried about the veto vote, as if there's this mysterious person in the car preventing the entire car from stopping at your restaurant. That's garbage. It just doesn't happen all that much. That's not how people think about when they want to go to a restaurant. They're not thinking, oh, well, we're not going to go to McDonald's because not everybody wants a Big Mac. That doesn't really happen anymore. And I don't think ever really did. And if you think about the best performing restaurant chains these days, they actually have pretty tightly edited menus. I mean, you mentioned Sweetgreen. I mean, Sweetgreen has a certain type of menu item that it introduces. It doesn't really gum up its menu that much. I mean, it's it's a relatively flexible type concept. You look at Chipotle. Chipotle doesn't really introduce a whole lot of new menu items that much. You have, Raising Cane's is basically one menu item and one side, and that's roughly about it. And then it's got a fabulous sauce. And you can take that one menu item and put it on a bun. And I think that's the most complicated thing that they do. You got, Wingstop, which is basically chicken wings, boneless chicken wings and chicken sandwiches now. They're one of the best performing restaurant companies. So the best restaurant companies know what they are and they're okay with it. And they don't try to be something for everybody because you can't do it this day. You can't really do it these days.
Yeah. I think another chain that did that tried to be, there for everyone was Noodles, because they introduced so many new items that were really not, in sync with what, their concept was about. And they just had so many different, like stuffed pastas and linguine and all kinds of things that took different types of cooking equipment. And now they're simplifying their menu and going back to the mac and cheese, which is their bestseller, and doing variations on the mac and cheese. So you don't have to bring in a lot of additional SKUs for something like that. Right.
They're noodles.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's what they're about. They're noodles, and just be noodles. That's okay. There's plenty of noodle dishes out there for you to play with. You can play with mac and cheese literally all day long. Saw a recipe the other day for caramelized onion mac and cheese, and I really need to try it. But this is not a mac and cheese podcast. But,
too bad.
Yeah, it really is too bad. We can talk about mac and cheese all day. Yeah, I mean, like even if you look at Chili's, here's a great example actually. Now, Chili's is a bar and grill chain, it tends to have a broader menu. In some respects, you have to have that, but one of the reasons for their success is they actually cut a bunch of their menu, and really are focused on what they do best. And they're not trying to be everything for everybody. If you look at Texas Roadhouse, they're not trying to be everything to everybody because you can't. It's not what the consumer is. Consumer these days is like, I want to go out for chicken fingers, so I'm going to go to Raising Cane's. Yeah, I'm going to go. Let's go to Chili's and get a burger and some fajitas. I'm going to go to McDonald's and I'm going to get a McChicken or whatever, and that sort of thing. That's consumers. You are who you are these days, and you don't really need to be too much of everything. And if you're not, because the issue is got all this menu development, but restaurant traffic is not exactly flourishing right now, especially in the fast food sector where most of this menu development is taking place.
That's true. I think I have a feeling that restaurants in 2025 are going to cut back on some of their menu items because I think they realize it's gotten out of hand, and the labor is an issue because they still haven't gotten back up to speed since the pandemic, especially skilled labor. If you're introducing new things that people really have to be trained on to make. So I really think they're going to do a pivot next year and try and streamline the menus a bit more.
Yeah, right. Of course, one would have thought that with the amount of limited time offers that were introduced last year and the amount of menu development we saw in 2023, that they would have cut back this year. But that didn't happen. My sense of it, by the way, Pat, is, you're seeing this kind of menu development, frankly, because customers, these restaurant chains are looking for anything they can do to break through, and get consumer attention while avoiding a value war, which is fair. and so all these companies are just turning to some really aggressive menu development. My problem with it tends to be that, if you are introducing new menu items and those new menu items aren't generating more traffic and sales, then you're just spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And then you probably need to go back to the drawing board and figure something out, because you might. Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
No, I was going to say there's so much more competition in each of the segments, and that's the other reason that they keep introducing. Innovation is something that can put you ahead of the pack.
Right. Yeah. I'd imagine it's a lot more fun to develop new menu items than just to run the same thing over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, if you're going to outpace your operations, you're causing some real problems. And if all you're doing all this effort. I mean, the thing is, like, go back to the Oleato example. You're introducing a new product you're introducing your customers to a very, very new concept, olive oil and coffee. You have to suddenly source all this olive oil. And then you have to train your baristas how to make these drinks. And, and there's probably a lot more that I'm unfamiliar with in terms of what they do, with the olive, but you have to train everybody on how to make, olive oil cold form or whatever. And then, so you're adding you end up, basically adding a new ingredient, and then you have to teach your baristas how to make these drinks. And, it didn't sell at all. I think that's probably one of the biggest failures, new product failures we've seen in a while.
And it was Howard Schultz's idea. Right?
Yeah, it was. The thing is, like, you go back and, if you remember when he returned, he was talking about, he came back and he was deeply, deeply concerned about operations inside Starbucks cafes. Deeply concerned. And, and as we're sitting here today, that remains a concern. It's an issue that people talk about. But then he goes to Italy, puts olive oil in his coffee and decides we need to do this, and comes back and makes glorious promises about what this is going to be. And then in a remarkably short time frame, based on when he came up with this idea, it was a product inside stores and then introduced in the United States. And then for it not to sell is an immense level of effort that you've put your company through. And, you're essentially distracting your marketing teams. So the other issue is that you got to market all of this stuff. So you're marketing this drink, but then people try it and don't like it, or it's just too weird for them. Mm-hmm. It's just too out of, that one was particularly crazy. And then for it to not sell is pretty disastrous. And then you end up having, it ends up compounding issues that you already had and stuff like that. So there are serious consequences when you get this wrong. Take a risk. There's nothing wrong with that. Companies definitely need to do that. But to me, if you already have a problem, why do you worsen it with something like that? It still makes me, it will forever leave me scratching my head.
Well, I think you can't get too unique. That's one of, when Technomic analyzes limited time offers, uniqueness is one of the characteristics it looks for. But if you get too unique, people will not go for it. It might create buzz and be a good marketing gimmick, but it doesn't sell and it doesn't build traffic.
Yeah. You got to introduce it slowly or something. You got to figure out a way. Like, they came up with a whole line, just start off with a couple of drinks at some of your reserve stores and stuff like that, and get people used to the idea. Some of the best ideas, as you probably know far better than I do, some of the best ideas in the restaurant industry start at higher end restaurants and sound completely crazy. And then eventually the broader customer base gets, figures it out and starts adopting it. And then it starts filtering its way into other parts of the restaurant industry. It's probably, the Starbucks has a built-in testing ground in those reserve stores. Mm-hmm. So if I would have done that, if I felt that was a real, and no, it wasn't. I don't think the U.S. consumer is ever going to go with too many of it. At least some of it was actually decent. I actually like the foam quite a bit. But
Well, I tried it. It wasn't my favorite thing. I mean, one of the, the cortado was okay. And the one they did in the espresso martini was okay. But olive oil and coffee just isn't a good combo.
yeah, but you need alcohol, Pat. You needed alcohol to make it good, Pat.
Right.
But
To emulsify it.
no, I mean, it was not necessary. There's so many different coffee and coffee-like and similar to coffee beverages. It's not even funny. It's not that necessary. We don't need that much. We don't, I think the entire coffee sector has just gone completely overboard on some of this stuff. And sometimes I think it's just way too easy to develop a new coffee or whatever beverage because sometimes it's just completely gone overboard. I don't know, but I don't know how credible I am on that. I'm an old guy who drinks drip coffee. Though I am a coffee snob.
Well, so am I. But I think, beverages are such a, hot category that everyone's trying to be a hotbed of innovation in the beverage category. And the lines are really blurring because now smoothie concepts are introducing coffee and coffee concepts are doing these blended drinks that are like smoothies. So it's, it's all to get a piece of the beverage business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of Starbucks beverages these days are basically desserts. I mean, come on, that's getting ridiculous. So real quick before we go, Pat, I want to talk, what are going to be the hot new menu items next year? I know you're thinking about this.
Yeah. Well, one, I mentioned Korean. That was really hot this year. And there's still a lot of room to explore all the different facets of Korean cuisine and all the different ways you can, menu it. But I also think Turkish is, having its moment. The Turkish breakfast is something that's really trending on social media, but it goes beyond that. And Mediterranean food has been hot, on trend for a long, long time. But now this niche, of Turkish food is starting to emerge. So that's one of the things I'm watching.
Oh, very good. So Korean food is fantastic. But so are you saying, is it like more than just gochujang and kimchi?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the hot pot concepts are really growing. Barbecue. There are so many. I mean, gochujang is just one type of jang. There are like hundreds of jangs in Korean cuisine, and they're all different sauces. And we know how sauces can really innovate the menu. So I think there's just, a lot of territory there to explore.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Put gochujang in your chili. There you go. That's what I do. I replace
that sounds good.
I replace my tomato paste with it. It's, adds a nice spice. Anyway, Pat, this was fantastic. Really appreciate you joining me this week on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
And that should do it for this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, which was edited, as always, by Spoons. Artwork by Nico Hines. You may find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at www.restaurantbusinessonline.com/article/deeper-dive. And you may subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Jonathan Mays, your host, podcast producer, and the editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. Thank you for listening. Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions like, how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.